Hey YouTube, today I'm going to talk about how to make the 606 hi-hat from scratch. The TR-606 is an analog drum synthesizer made by Roland, and it's been used by Aphex Twin, 9 Inch Nails, and Autechre. So even though the 606 is a classic, it also works well with modern electronic music. It has a gritty, aggressive tone. And for example, it sounds pretty cool over these techno loops I found on Splice. Before I get started with the phase plant patch, I have to give a shout out to Moritz Klein, who made a video walking through the TR-606 circuit, and he also shows an implementation of it on a breadboard. He walks through everything step by step, and it was really helpful for me. It's a good video. I highly recommend checking it out if you like this one. Okay, let's start building the patch. So the starting point for a 606 hi-hat is a nice metallic noise generator. And the Roland drum machines have a really signature way of creating that metallic sound, and they actually use a swarm of square waves, which is a really kind of quirky way of generating noise. A lot of people would do something more random like white noise, but this swarm of square waves does create a nice sort of in-between point of inharmonic and harmonic content. And how we're going to do this is we want fixed pitches, just like the Roland circuit. So we will dial in those pitches. So the pitches you want to dial in are 245 Hertz, 306, 365, 415, 437, and 619, and it'll sound like this. So the next thing I want to do is model some of the analog characteristics in the 606 oscillators to make the sounding a little more accurate. So the first thing I want to do is turn the phase random all the way up, and that is because these Schmidt trigger oscillators are free running, and so their phase will be random with respect to any MIDI input or with respect to each other. So we can simulate that this way. And then I have a bunch of random LFOs, and each random LFO you can see is modulating a pulse width of one of the oscillators and the pitch of a little oscillator, just 0.1%. And this is just simulating some pitch drift, some pulse width drift in the circuit. We can see before and after. So yeah, just adding a little bit of drift or jitter in the circuits. And then the last thing I hooked up was this pitch control. This is just shifting the pitches up and down with one knob. And that's so that later on I can just tune this 606 hat the way I'd like. So the next circuit stage in the TR-606 is what they call the bandpass filter. But in phase plant, it's going to work better if we separate the high pass and low pass components of a bandpass separately. So we'll start with a nonlinear filter set to the warm mode, and we'll tune this high pass to 400 Hertz with a Q of 0.7 and a drive of 22%, and it sounds like this. And next we are going to add another nonlinear filter in low pass mode, tuned to around 8 kilohertz with a Q of 2.9. I also have a macro set to give some additional resonance if desired, and the drive is set to 22% in metallic mode. So next we need to model some more of the saturation that's going on in the 606 circuit. So we'll turn on a distortion module in saturate mode with a drive of about 7 dB and the mix turned all the way up. We're going to add an additional low pass filter with the cutoff set to 15 kilohertz and the Q set to 0.7. We can finally set up the amplitude envelope, which will finally make this sound more percussive. We can set the sustain all the way to 0. I have the decay set to 40 milliseconds. I also have this velocity MIDI input to push up the decay time so that we can simulate open hi-hats with higher velocities. In this MIDI over here, I have kind of a sequence of 2 low velocity notes and 1 high velocity notes, and it sounds like this. So the TR-606 has one final circuit after the amplitude envelope. It's a one final high pass filter. I'll choose this nonlinear filter in warm mode with the cutoff set to 3.9, the Q at 1.8, with an additional macro to boost the resonance if needed, and the drive set to 6%. It sounds like this. So the components we have right here represent all of the circuit stages of the original 606. But since we're building this in phase plant, we can take advantage of some other cool features and make the sound even cooler. So I'm going to enable unison on each of these square waves with the detune set to the default value, 25 cents, 3 voices on each unison, and the stereo spread turned all the way up. So now we get some cool stereo high end in our hi-hats, and it sounds like this. So that's the whole patch. It's pretty simple, but it's a nice classic sound. At this point, I'm just gonna jam around with the loop, try out different saturation settings on the nonlinear filter, try tuning the pitch and find some cool sounds. So I'll just jam out for the rest of the video. If you liked up till now, if you found it useful, please give it a like, it helps out. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, follow along with the channel. Thanks for watching.